Aloha everybody, welcome to Facing Our Future. I'm your host Angus McKelvey, and as we do every week on this show, we take a look at new future trends and technologies to look at what they can do to improve our lives both here in Hawaii and around the world, and maybe also to look at ways they can be used to address the problems and issues that face us in our everyday life. Today we're going to talk about disruption, more importantly disruptive innovation, a concept you may have heard of, a concept that's changing business and technology as we speak. I'm happy to have with me today my two guests, Glen Nakajima, who's the technical director of OceanIt, welcome, and Michael Pfeffer, CEO of IBiS Networks. Aloha and welcome. So, man on the street. I'm walking along, I meet you guys, run into you. You talk to me about disruptive technologies, disruptive innovation. What does that mean in a nutshell?
Oh, technology disruption is basically when you're changing a paradigm a lot of times. So it could be a technology that, you know, if it's you have a conventional application for a particular product or service, that sometimes you'll see an application come out of nowhere that will just change the paradigm. An example of it in commercial world is when, say, Google Earth first came out. Okay. That's a technology that prior to it coming out in the public was, you know, very limited to maybe the intelligence community of the United States. And the fact that it comes out and basically changes the way we do things in the public is really disruption.
And now, is this always new technologies that have just been invented, or does it come into play with technologies perhaps that existed in other areas but were never thought to be applied in this particular instance or problem?
Yes, actually that repurposing, in the defense area it's called dual use, but it's not only limited to defense, there are a lot of multiple applications for technologies and a lot of them remaining to be discovered actually, so you're absolutely right.
And so you have the two ways. And Michael, you know, IBiS Networks, you know, one of the cutting edge companies here in Hawaii, how do you employ or use disruptive innovation technologies in your business or your field?
Sure, so IBiS is focused on how do we help people take control of energy consumption. And so for the last 100 years or so, we've plugged things in and we pay our energy bill, and we really have no understanding of, you know, how much energy all the devices that we plug in are consuming. And, you know, part of this they call the Internet of Things revolution. We're starting to see devices becoming smarter, but we have millions and billions of devices that aren't smart. And so we're finding ways with our socket that we plug into the wall to give people that information. And when you have information, you can make change, and you can do things with that. So
the disruption in this case would be you have these appliances or dumb appliances or not yet smart, but because of your technology that you brought in, now you have a way to make these appliances smart. You can manage the load use and
exactly. We're making existing technology smarter, and so it's a way to sort of jumpstart that revolution without having to buy new technology that's got smart brains embedded in it. And you know, we've got billions of devices: your printer, your refrigerator, your dryer, your coffee maker. You know, your coffee maker consumes 40, 50 watts at all times sitting there plugged in. You probably didn't know that. It's going to be a long time before every coffee maker is smart.
Well, the way I use mine, it would probably be 80.
That's right. But when they're making coffee, yeah.
But you know, one of the exciting things about your company, and to speak to disruptive innovation, is the fact that not only do you have this energy management type of situation, but you can also use it to cull data and be able to do analytics and review of certain appliances or machines?
Yeah, so the idea is you collect information on energy consumption for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of devices. And when you have that information, you can start to compare the energy signature for thousands of similar devices, and you can look at device health, sort of the healthy heartbeat, the signature of a device, and see if it needs maintenance or replacement. How well is it functioning? How is it functioning in a given environment? So yeah, that big data component, I think, is where in any technology you start to see things change. The Google Earth is a good example. Gathering all the information about geography and putting it on your phone and giving you control over it. We never had that technology.
Yeah, so. And now we have that, and it also you're giving the power to the end user and the consumer through your networks as well.
Yeah, so you can log on and look at all your devices that are plugged into our sockets and say, hey, you know, I'm not going to be home, or my school is closed, or my business is closed for these 12 hours, I can turn off 85% of the devices, and the other ones I want to make sure don't get turned off. And if they do, if they fail, I want to know. If my refrigerator fails, I want to get an alert that says, hey, get home because your food's going to go bad. So.
That's really critical to note. I mean, for instance, you have a situation where it could be in a hospital or medical field where a machine has to be on and it goes down, or in the diagnostic realm, as you were talking about earlier, you can start to see a machine exhibit sick behavior. It's
yeah,
not feeling
absolutely.
Well.
I think that we're just starting to see how that application runs across, not just I've got a refrigerator full of vaccines and I want to make sure it doesn't fail because that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. But hey, this copier is starting to run ragged and I better get it serviced. And so I think we're going to see that more and more, both in the household and in business, as devices get smarter and as platforms like ours get adopted. You're going to see that predictive maintenance extend the working life of your device greatly, and that's going to that saves you money, it saves energy, and
that's really a huge point you make, is you save energy. Energy efficiency, of course, has been one of the big 800-pound gorillas in our energy future. We hear a lot about renewable portfolios, but you don't hear about energy efficiency. So your company is taking a disruptive approach with this technology into energy efficiency.
Yeah, we see, I think the latest study says that energy efficiency, turning something off, costs about 2.8 cents per kilowatt. That's a lot cheaper than trying to replace fuel with biofuel, right? I mean, that's just a much more expensive proposition. We have to do it. But the cheapest, easiest thing we can do is turn things off. And I think you saw that with the aftermath of Fukushima in Japan. They shut down all their nuclear reactors, and the Japanese people, as a country, were able to reduce their energy consumption by about 30% in less than 2 years. It's remarkable, and there's that much fat lying around if we can just take control and turn things off. So.
And you can see it right here in downtown Honolulu, all the wall-mounted units in these old buildings. I mean, you can only imagine what that's happening. The case in point of the coffee makers and refrigerators that are left on in the weekend. I mean, all of these things pull money out of our economy.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically, that's money that goes back in our economy. It's also money that usually ends up shipped off for oil and other things. So this technology you're deploying is a tool, perhaps for Hawaii, to be able to meet its energy future, especially how over-reliant we are on fossil fuels.
It's definitely a big part. One of the reasons why we are a spin-out of OceanIt. The technology was developed at OceanIt, and so it's a Hawaii-based company, but we see at 35 to 50 cents a kilowatt. I mean, that's just crazy. There are places on the mainland U.S. where it's 6 cents a kilowatt. So anything we can do to just turn things off and reduce that energy consumption, I think that's less barrels of oil that we, as we transition, that we have to consume. So
Michael talks about, one of the OceanIt family of companies, and with OceanIt, what kind of projects is this? The disruptive technology and innovation? Is this something that the company deploys on a company-wide basis, looking at all projects, or do you specialize, I guess, in this type of business model?
Yes, actually, OceanIt is very much oriented towards disruption and innovation. We also do projects that are basically interesting, challenging, and disruptive. We love the disruptive.
Yes.
And the innovation in OceanIt comes from diversity. So it comes from having a diverse staff with diverse viewpoints, and in a lot of cases, not being part of an industry.
That's really key, because you're not part of a particular industry, so you don't have that silo mentality you often hear about. You look at the world within the parameters of that one industry, and often solutions or ideas or technologies are precluded because you're looking within the framework. So OceanIt seems to have adopted this wide expanse, which might be conducive to in innovation design, because you're able to grab and look at things from all sorts of different areas.
Yes, that's right. We actually are able to take a broad look at any particular problem and approach it from a fresh direction. And in, I would say, about 80% of the cases that we consider, we actually will come up with very novel solutions. And in a lot of cases for our clients, they're solutions that they have frankly not thought of before.
There's a theory in business called red ocean, blue ocean.
Yes.
Red ocean is to basically penetrate the existing market space. Blue ocean is to look for the new opportunities in a perhaps undefined or unexisting market space. Do you see the work you're doing at OceanIt more along the blue ocean line, trying to discover these new marketplaces that may not existed, or is it still within the parameters of Red Ocean? You're penetrating existing market spaces with these new technologies and ideas.
We do actually a bit of both. Frankly speaking, though, it's more exciting. The blue ocean.
Yes, the blue
it's the uncharted territory.
Yes.
So we love problems that do not have solutions and often represent new areas, completely new areas. And we take a very holistic approach to these problems. So we have staff that are technical, everything from highly trained PhD, but we do not only include the technical staff in solving problems. We actually involve the entire staff, and that way we really get a fresh viewpoint in terms of developing a solution, but also in terms of the design of a solution. Usability.
Usability, and by bringing in these people from these various backgrounds to come together to work on this problem, you're also opening up the ideas. Perhaps maybe what somebody with an accountant, which would normally be a financial money problem, while they know the numbers good, they may not have the answer idea that somebody, perhaps a communication writing person, may have. So you have this exchange of ideas. Do you often see in this situation where you're getting these groups and teams that come together? Is it at first, kind of a clash? Is it, I guess, for people getting into this for the first time? I mean, is there a learning curve or an adjustment or mental thing that has to happen within innovation and disruption?
Normally people would say yes. There would be a steep learning curve. However, when we select people for OceanIt, we are very careful about fitting people into the ecosystem, as we call it, within OceanIt.
Yes.
And these tend to be very, very thoughtful people. One of the key principles that our CEO and management stress is being able to let go. Being able to let go of biases, preconceptions, and maybe standard solutions, and it makes it easier. There is still a dynamic tension at times, but it's really not as bad as most people would think.
It's more of a steel-on-steel effect. The dynamic tension between two groups can kind of foster more ideas because of the exchange that's happening right there.
Yes.
And so that's really a thing that's crucial too. Ecosystem is a good term, and I'm glad you mentioned that. You have the ecosystem approach of looking at problems and issues. In your situation, IBiS Networks, the ecosystem was energy efficiency, but you also were able to connect data collection and analytics and everything like that, right?
Yeah, so exactly. You see this intersection of renewable energy, energy efficiency, big data, the Internet of Things, as things get smarter, the Internet revolution applied to another field. And so, I think that's a great example would be looking at the iPhone, right? The revolution that essentially Steve Jobs put a supercomputer in everyone's pocket. And today it's almost unthinkable that your phone didn't have a big screen that you could watch Scooby-Doo on.
That is important.
Our kids don't understand what is that thing, this rotary phone. I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. And so I think that that it's kind of the red ocean, blue ocean effect. You're looking at both. You're looking for those novel technologies, but you're also looking at how you can apply that technology or that sort of another revolution to an existing paradigm and change it. In this case, the initial product is energy efficiency, and then for the follow-on ability to do stuff with that information, it's a whole different business, really.
Yeah.
But it kind of comes together in this one device.
And you're also creating now a mechanism to solve problems for people, by having this big data, be able to pull this data in and run the analytics and see things. You're now able to. One of the examples, and we talked earlier a couple of months ago, was in the hotel industry. The problems they have of the people with the refrigerators on all the time, sucking up the juice 24 hours a day.
Right, and you're seeing, a lot of hotels now have green programs. So you say, hey, if you don't need to wash your towel every day, if you hang up your towel, we won't wash it. You put it on the ground, we'll wash it, right? Or you can say, put the card on your bed, and we won't wash the sheets that night, right? It's part of this green program. We're trying to give people the ability to take control of that mini fridge. Hey, you know what? We don't need the mini fridge for these 3 days, so we want to be able to say, hey, don't have it on for me. I don't need it on. Right? And we want to be part of that solution. And so it's not just the customer being the hotel chain. It's ultimately, how do we give control to everybody?
Yeah, the end user.
The end user.
So you're empowering the end user through this. Well, I like what you were talking about, revolution upon a revolution, or building a new you started off in energy efficiency, and then you went to big data.
Right.
I'm going to have you take a leap here. Where do you see potentially either with IBiS or with OceanIt some of these paradigms upon paradigms occurring? I mean, maybe what do you think might be the next thing beyond big data and energy efficiency?
I think the next thing in this space is as buildings and devices become truly smart and connected, I think we'll see tremendous shifts in people's behavior. Right now, you walk into a room and it's a relatively static experience, and you have to actively turn on the lights, turn on the TV, turn on the air conditioner, whatever. As I think we're just beginning to see, as everything becomes connected and smart, how does that change our behavior? And it's a little bit scary in some ways. And we've seen that with politics and everything else. There is no off. There is no downtime.
There is no off. There is no downtime. There is no off. There is no downtime. And
so we have to learn and adjust to that. And I think that's kind of the next level. The next revolution we'll see is how do we adjust to living in an immersive, the confluence of virtual reality and reality.
Real reality, exactly. You see the people walking down the street, they're like lost in their virtual reality, and then they run into a telephone pole, and everything like that. And I guess, it's the ecosystem approach. One of the things that's amazing is it's constantly in flux. You're constantly developing and moving forward. Back to market space really quickly. When you have this type of disruptive innovation, do you find that there's always not a resistance by the public or the market at first? Like for instance, to empower people to use their cell phones, the end user, for energy management. Is there as you look at that, saying, okay, how do we get people to, want to use it? How do you get them to accept it? Or
I think, one of the big factors is cost. I'd love to be able to control that, but what is the payback on that? So as cost gets driven down and down and down and down, that spurs adoption. That's one thing. But a lot of it is education. And we find that when we go in and talk to customers, they intuitively know that there's a problem and they want to solve it. And I think it's giving people a simple, compelling solution. And if you can do that, then you're really going to see that adoption.
And that's what it's a couple of times. It's taking the problem. The problem is now the focus. Not I'm going to develop a product and I'm going to try to bring this forward into the marketplace so it might fulfill a need. But rather, this is a problem we've identified, and therefore, stepping it back, this is some things and technologies or things that may be able to come in and solve this problem.
That's what OceanIt's really good at.
You guys step it backwards like that?
Yes. I believe what you're describing is what we would call an emergent need.
Okay.
So when you look at the environment and the landscape of whatever industry there is, there are certain cases when you see you're anticipating a problem, anticipating an issue, and planning ahead for that, identifying a technology or solution set that may be able to deal with that issue. That's what we would call planning for an emergent need. Now, this is where it gets interesting, is adoption. Because if you have foresight on occasion, not everyone has the same foresight. And a lot of the battle is convincing them that, hey, this is relevant. You may not worry about it now, but in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, this may become an issue to you. So there's the usual battle on resources and commitment to a current operating state that we deal with. But those are the blue ocean type of areas that we love to.
And history is rife with them, for instance.
I think, to go back to Steve Jobs and Apple, and this may be a bit of an apocryphal story, but the story goes that he recognized that he wanted to have, the iPhone and the iPad out there, this iPad experience for everyone. But you couldn't just sell this device without the ecosystem around it to support it. And so he looked for an ecosystem that was existing that he could disrupt, and that was the music industry. Created the iPod, which created the iTunes store, which created this entire ecosystem of millions of users and millions of credit card accounts used to hooking up their device and downloading music and paying for it. And lo and behold, you create the iPhone, Now you've got this, you've created an ecosystem, and your second product is a phone. It's really a smart computer in your hand, and then you make it a little bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, the phablet, the iPad, you couldn't have created that initially, right? You couldn't have just sold iPads without any ecosystem around it. How are you going to download stuff? There's no way to download stuff to it, right? And so, looking at that 15-year trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really, incredible to look at the predictive innovation to try to address this, but you are taking an innovative gamble, and that should actually stimulate more innovation that you are doing this. Mm-hmm. We're going to go ahead and take a break, but we'll be back with our guests to talk about disruptive innovations, the trends for the future, and look at some exciting products in development now that could change all of our lives soon. We'll be right back.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us.
Okay, it's every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii. We'll see you there. I'm Jake.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome back to Facing Our Future. I'm your host, Angus McKelvey, and today we're talking about disruptive innovation, and it's a good thing. And joining me today are Michael Pfeffer and Glen Nakajima from OceanIt and IBiS Networks. Guys, it's incredible conversation so far. When we last left off, we were talking about, Steve Jobs, how he broke into the music industry with the iPad, iPhone, but then you had these secondary, third effects of, education, right, multimedia. So, but when going forward, when you do this type of thing, how strongly do you look at the potential second and third types of applications or innovations? Or do you really just focus on the problem and that, and then the other things kind of start to percolate as the process goes along?
Well, what we find is, and going back to the approach for innovation, we like to take a crack at very hard problems. So problems that basically other people have, so to speak, busted their pick on. And so we like those problems because they're very difficult. And but in the process of identifying those solutions, you're actually going after a singular problem initially. However, the more you dig into it, like anything else, you start noticing details, and then frequently it's, I could use this for that, and that, and that. And so there's some other examples that we brought today that can exhibit some of those qualities. But in general, to answer your question, that's what we find. The more we dig, the more we find.
The disruptive innovation ecosystem is one where you're always, keeping options open, doors open, not like your traditional development strategy where it's like, okay, this is our technology, this is our market, and we're going to solely focus in on this, kind of closing the walls around it.
They're very, very different. I came out of the venture capital space where we invest in startup companies, and now I'm running a startup company. So, in real estate, they say it's location, location, location. In venture capital, to entrepreneurs, I would say focus, focus, focus. You've got to focus on execution with any given technology. But on the OceanIt side, you've really got to be able to explore those, how are we going to create this technology, and what are the multiple applications, and where can we pivot this into, a completely different area. And I think that's the beauty of the dual use space, where they're able to solve impossible problems for military applications. The commercial application in the private sector might be completely different. It might have nothing to do with what they solve for the military, but so it's having that ability to focus on a problem, but be open to pivot to whatever the real, the marketable solution is.
Like, for instance, the laser. You have the laser for military applications developed. Now the commercial one, a German company can make lasers so you can cut steel and all sorts of things like that. So that would be one area in the dual use space, perhaps, where there is this commercial spin-off. Big companies often their demise has been not recognizing that there is a threat or a disruption to the existing business plan. So, like Steve Jobs was. So you have some companies like IBM and others, the companies that made the CDs, for instance, they were told, hey, there's this thing called MP3 coming out, you might want to look at it. And they ignored it and they were eliminated. Yeah. So when you work with companies, as you go out there, I mean, looking for these types of opportunities, do you see today, do you still see that mentality of big companies, big firms to not acknowledge that this disruptive threat exists?
Absolutely. A good example, everyone would know this, is, say, Kodak. Originally, with film, the film industry thought it would last forever. Digital cameras came along, and
Kodak never bought into the digital camera.
Actually, I had read that they had developed a digital camera.
They had the patents on a lot of it, but they didn't market it well, and they didn't recognize that.
And part of that was the fact that they always thought that film would be there. And so it's like you develop the digital, that's great, but because film is always going to be the professional prima donna industry standard, it's kind of a niche side thing, not recognizing that if developed and then in the marketplace, it could displace film. There was no recognition of this is a displacement type of thing that we need to incorporate so that when this displacement happens, we're not left hanging with a Rochester, New York being a giant closed photo lab.
No one wants to be in Rochester, first of all.
Exactly. Lucky we don't live Rochester, but Hawaii.
I think one of the things we see now more and more and more is big companies are recognizing that problem. And some of the things OceanIt's working on and that we've been involved with when we go to Silicon Valley and talk to people and talk to venture funds, I think a great example is the car industry. 20 years ago, Mercedes would never talk to BMW, would never talk to whoever, right? Ford. They would never talk to each other. They would never look for outside innovation. It was entirely focused internally. Now, every major auto firm has their own venture fund in Silicon Valley, and they're looking for new technologies that they can bring into the computer that is your car, the car that is your computer.
The car's becoming a computer.
So I think most companies or companies that are going to succeed are recognizing the need to be able to change and to be able to adopt new technologies. Otherwise, they're gone.
Well, the car is a good example of the original disruptive technology. When they first came out, there were these very high, expensive machines like the digital camera that presented no threat to the market of the horse-drawn carriage. Then the Model T comes along and you're able to manufacture them with this new technology at a very good price. Now you've disrupted the marketplace completely. And now we see another disruption occurring with cars becoming computers, smart cars and
They're
such.
driving themselves.
It's driving me crazy. But the thing is that, but now automakers and big companies, unlike the years past when the Model T, are now recognizing this and are actively to their venture funds and other things looking for these types of technologies.
They have to.
Yeah.
They have to. I mean, look at Tesla, look what they're doing in the electric car industry. So that change is going to happen no matter how much they resist.
And you see them again jumping outside of their traditional area, not cars, engines, performance. We're now going to computers, GPS systems. We're bringing in these things and technologies from there to help address or improve the driving safety and experience.
Well, I think Elon Musk is probably the poster child of this.
Yes,
right?
a friend of mine.
The man went to, he sent rockets to space. He's the only non-country to send a rocket into space and come back. And he's a private company will be supplying the space station with astronauts shortly.
Yes.
And when he got into the space industry, they said he was crazy. And he said, no, we're gonna disrupt that technology. Instead of $50 million to put a satellite in orbit, it's gonna be $5. And they can now put, a third world country can put their own satellite in orbit for $5 million with their rocket.
Yeah, and the change of the paradigm was not only the microsat, but also before then, the old way, I guess, was big government contract funded through Congress to a defense contractor only, and they, like for instance, the Saturn system, these big, expensive, and Elon Musk came along and said, no, you can go ahead and go out to these different areas and put something together, relatively inexpensive, technologically advanced.
And you could reuse it.
Yeah,
it's got reusable rockets instead of just use once and there goes
dump in the ocean, and there you go. Well, back to OceanIt, some of your tech. You brought some great things for us to look at here. So perhaps we can start with this device that looks like a ray gun from a science fiction movie.
Sure.
All they gave me was the socket.
Yes, because we want to make.
This is the prop we can.
So
hide behind.
what issue or problem came to this, from whence this sprung, I guess, to back it up?
Oh, okay. Well, let me describe what this is first. So
Okay.
you might want to rotate it toward the
camera.
cameras a little.
We're going to have camera wars here.
Okay.
Don't
So-
look into the lens.
Yes,
Don't look at
yes,
it.
yes, you will regret it.
You will watch my show.
So what we have here, and this is actually a prototype, so a few words before I describe this device. One of the tools of innovation is the ability to prototype quickly.
Okay.
To try ideas, test if they work, and then if they don't, discard them and try another thing. So in that respect, we have a design lab, 3D printing capability. What you're seeing here, this is a 3D printed prototype of the third generation of what we call a hostile fire system. Okay, so what that is, it is an infrared detector, and it looks for gunshots, basically. And so the need that this was derived from more than a few years ago with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, was developing a capability to be able to detect if someone was shooting at you, to identify what they were shooting and where they're located very precisely. Now, there are a lot of devices on the market then and on the market now that do this sort of thing. However, they have weaknesses in certain areas. And some of these approaches are, in one case, are acoustic. They're microphones. And the microphones listen for a gunshot and try to figure out where it's coming from. In certain environments, that's really problematic because you get echoes, you can get somebody using a silenced weapon, and basically there's conditions where it's very hard. And so what we have actually is a way to optically, through looking at the infrared light, be able to determine where this is to less than a degree of pointing accuracy and to be able to type the actual weapon. And so it turns out that all weapons have a particular fingerprint associated with this signature. And we're actually able to see that this sensor operates, you can think of it like a very sophisticated camera operates at 10,000 frames per second. It's taking 10,000 shots per second. Very precise pointing accuracy. It allows us to see things that most other instruments cannot see, simply cannot see. And so in terms of disruption, this is an example of disruption. This is our, as I mentioned, our third generation prototype. It is coupled with a dazzler system. And so this is a prototype of a threat sensor with a dazzler. And what a dazzler is, it's basically like a searchlight. And the idea is, if somebody's shooting, it very quickly pivots and prevents them from getting off further shots.
Blinds them, in other words.
I wouldn't say blinds.
Dazzles them?
Dazzles
Dazzles them,
them.
wow.
They're actually trees against blinding people. That's what this is, and again, this is a result of, literally continuous development, development and refinement. And so, what originally started with the military industry has now become of interest to, say, power companies. I don't know if you'd heard of the events fairly recently in California, where people were actually damaging the power system in the transmission yards with gunshots, and that spurred a lot of activity on utilities' parts for getting gunshot detection.
And also you have that for like airports and other areas
Exactly,
where,
yes.
somebody,
Yes.
you have a shooter come in and you can do that,
Yes.
locate them. The other companies you said were looking at acoustic, models, and you went optical. And I bring this back to IBiS. As you do disruptive innovation, do you look at other companies and where they are going and perhaps try to disrupt as well? Like, for instance, you're having a consumer level plug socket system where others may be commercial only or the appliances only? Is that
Well, actually flip it in our case. We decided to focus primarily on the enterprise market, on the commercial market, rather than the residential market. And the reason for that is lots and lots of people have come up with different solutions in the household market, whether it's a socket like this, or in the case of new construction or retrofit, making your entire house smart. And we decided to focus on big business because government and military, there are millions and billions, literally billions of sockets out there that need to be taken care of. We took the approach of focusing on big business before looking really at the residential space. I think we'll get there, but I think it's a slightly different solution. And what you have to look for is different. There are different kinds of solutions at different scales of problems. So when you think about it from the big sense, you say, okay, we want to just turn off wall sockets for everyone, from the house to Microsoft's campus. Okay, there might be very different solutions because those are very different scales. In your house, you might have 20 things you want to monitor and turn off and control. On a big corporate campus, you might have 200,000 things you want to do. And it requires a very different kind of solution. So our network, all of our IP, the antennas we use, are very different than what you would probably use in a home situation.
But you were able to identify, okay, there's activity going on the consumer level, there's a need in the business level, so therefore we're going to enter this, I guess, blue ocean of commercial enterprise level socket management through your technology.
Yeah, we see there's just a tremendous opportunity and market need at the enterprise level, the big business level, for this solution. 40% of the energy consumed on your average office building like this is coming out of the wall socket, with little to no way to measure and control that. Now, at the household level, Apple's made a big announcement about making the house smart, control everything with your iPhone, and so that's just a very different. It looks the same, but it's a very different product.
Very different product, exactly, because it's a very different need.
Very different need. I think in the household, you're really looking more at behavior. How do I want my house to behave? The environment when I come home. What do I want on? What do I want off? How bright do I want the lights? How cold do I want the room? Do I want music playing? What kind of music? So I think in the household, you see much more of a behavioral solution. On the big business side, it's much more about, okay, we have a giant electric bill, and what are we going to do about it? And we don't know when our machines need to be serviced, and how are we going to get that control over that?
We're talking disruptive innovation today on Facing Our Future. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back to talk more about this exciting technologies, innovation, and what it means for the future of us, and what it could do to solve our problems. We'll be right back.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome back to Facing Our Future. I'm Angus McKelvey, your host. And boy, we wish they had the cameras rolling just a few minutes ago as we continued the exciting discussion on disruptive innovation, a new way of looking at the world to develop new products and technologies to expand our ever universe and to address issues and problems we face today. What are the things you were doing at OceanIt? And you brought another one of these devices, and I'm assuming this doesn't have the keys to a code or anything in it.
No. It won't spring out and attack
It's
you.
this Pelican case, so I'll let you go ahead.
It weighs about 50 pounds.
50 pounds.
Yes,
So what
yes.
be this, and how is this disruptive?
Can people see this? So what this is, in a nutshell, it's smart concrete. Okay, normally, been around for hundreds of years, probably thousands of years. Concrete is a basic building material, and it's used everywhere, basically. And so our innovation here, and this is a paradigm change, is to turn a conventional material and make it smart. So through nanotechnology, we have engineered additives that you just add to conventional concrete, allow it to cure, and it changes the properties in a way that allows us to monitor both the integrity and the loading on the concrete. So for an example, this tile, if you put it in a configuration, hook it up to our monitoring circuit, you're actually able to determine if there's load on it and how much load there is. You can also determine if there's damage, if it cracks. So originally, this was developed out of internal funding, internal efforts, and then we started to receive external funding to look at, in one case, security for military security applications, where people were looking for presence. They were looking for presence of intruders, of how much did, say, a vehicle would weigh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And recently, this actually, you had mentioned about multi-purposing
Yes.
innovation. We have had interest in the energy industry and the oil and gas industry, and this is a bit far afield in terms of helping them with environmental safeguards. So, for example, when say the oil industry has these wells, they have cement casings, and the cement casings sometimes may be compromised or fail through their natural lifetime, and they are looking for solutions that can allow them to monitor the health and well-being of their wells with the intent of preventing contamination.
Contamination.
Yes.
And you could actually also look at this in another space or opportunity for, like for instance, from the state side, harbor and other facilities where you have concrete sheets and stuff where you can sense that they're starting to break and crack.
Exactly.
And get in there and repair them before the salt water gets inside and of course destroys the rebar. Then you have a multi-million-dollar project on your hands right there.
Yes.
So again, it's about bringing information, right? This is kind of the red ocean side where you find an old industry. Concrete's been around since the Romans.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same formula for however many thousands of years, essentially, and completely changing that moribund paradigm, right? You're going, okay, no one's changed this for 2,000, 3,000 years. Now all of a sudden we've come up with a way that with many applications to just fundamentally change it.
Yeah, and there you could actually have a little bit of the blue ocean here because you have situations in areas like, for instance, highways and harbors where they're using it in a way so that they can predict the load and wear and tear. So now we're creating a purple ocean almost, if
Yes,
you will.
yes. And actually, this is a piece of maybe a effort thrust that we have in terms of developing smart infrastructure. That's an initial step.
And that is critical smart infrastructure for government. For, as the cost of materials and contracts go up, and it's more critical to get better life out of your projects. This type of smart infrastructure is something, this innovation could be used in the public policy realm to help address these issues. And so that's kind of, for us too, is this disruptive innovation way of looking at things, to apply it to problems that we have or issues that we face every day in other areas where it's reversing the brain drain or energy efficiency, that's why it's good to focus on that. Do you think that policymakers and others, should look to the world of disruptive innovation, even though it is a business model and seeing more of the economic side, as a way to look at some of these old vexing or these ongoing issues?
Absolutely. When you look at the news, everyone's heard of that bridge failure in Minnesota where basically concrete failed and the bridge fell down, large loss of life. Those issues always bring these problems back to the fore, and the politicians have to deal with it in terms of policy, in terms of regulation. It would be good to have, if everyone would have a bit of foresight, to look at technologies like this that would, basically reduce the risks of various societal problems that they're recurring. They keep happening. To
build a smarter future. The bridge fails. It's not, well, I'm going to get hundreds of millions of dollars more to build another bridge. I'm going to go ahead and invest in this type of structure so that we can, see when something like this is happening, and we can count perhaps the amount of cars and trucks and loads.
Yes.
And so now you have a system of perhaps revenue and taxation, which is a lot more fair and stringent because it's now by true weight load per vehicle and not just because of the vehicle crossing the gate.
Exactly, it's back to information.
Yeah, it's information. And I think, to your point on the politics side, I think one of the tragedies we've seen in Washington of late is a move away from science funding. And I think that we need to recognize that innovation is what drives, our ability to survive on this planet. And whether you believe in global warming or not, things are changing, and we need to come up with solutions. We need to make better bridges. We need to make better buildings, smarter buildings. We need to, we need to be more energy efficient. What's the harm in being more energy efficient? It saves money.
Exactly.
So I think that people need to support politicians who get the fact that you have this show, right? Talking about disruptive technology. Wow, okay,
you can see where I'm starting to go with this now. You're starting to see where I'm going with this.
It's vitally important. We have to support that because that's it can't all be private sector.
Yes.
I think there needs to be a healthy public-private partnership.
Yes.
And that is, I think, what is one of the great things, unsung sort of things about the American military. Much of what OceanIt's done and created, this was partly funded by the Office of Naval Research, and we got grant funding from them recently through Hawaii's Energy Accelerator program. Tremendous program where the Office of Naval Research is supporting the transition of Hawaii from fossil fuel to clean tech. and making our lives better in the process. And who would have ever thought, gee, the Navy is, American military is driving this change, and they really are.
Yeah, and it's again because of the disruptive innovation approach, you're now able to look beyond it. Okay, this is just a Navy project, Navy thing, and now take it to the world of energy efficiency. And for decision makers and policymakers, it's a way to really drive home that these terms, energy efficiency, goals of 30%, are not just esoteric things to which you keep talking about. They're actually a way to get us there through this technology. And by collecting the data, perhaps other types of applications.
Who knows what we're going to come up with?
Yeah. I mean, for instance, if they could collect data, let's just say we deploy this on an enterprise level in the Department of Health building, all those wall-mounted air conditioners they have, and through the use and monitoring, they're like, hey, this type of air conditioner, the life of it and the problems are such that we now need to look at another one or another system. Now you're having a smart purchasing going on.
You can make an intelligent decision about your next purchase.
Yes.
You can say, wow, this is a remarkably inefficient way to cool a room, and we can make, this one is much better. So we see that the classic household example is with the refrigerator. And we can show you, here's how much energy your fridge is consuming. It's $800 a year in Hawaii. You could buy a new one for $800 that uses $200 a year. In 1 year, you've paid for it, and you're saving $600 a year. So it's, the gathering the information is vital because you don't know how you're going to be able to use that.
Yeah.
And so you got to collect it.
Collect that data and
then you never know,
analyze
right? It's kind of like the
too.
smart concrete. I'm sure there are applications no one's even dreamed of that we're going to start to see by collecting that information.
Well, I think we may have stumbled upon the next paradigm on the paradigm for IBiS today. And you have all these smart appliances coming in, but with your solution, companies can continue to have legacy items deployed and not have to, for instance, get rid of all of the things and get all smart new coffee makers. We can use the coffee makers we have, and as we integrate these newer ones, especially since they're going to have to talk to each other, there's another potential paradigm for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We see this transition. Right now there are hundreds of millions of dumb devices out there, and we can't expect everyone to simply purchase new ones, but we can make those devices smart enough that they're going to, through their life cycle, we're going to start that process, and then, as you noted, the replacement purchasing decision can be a much more informed decision. So it's part of that transition.
It's going to help the consumer. I mean, it's going to put pressure on companies like, hey, their analytics. I mean, companies like IBiS are collecting data. So if we don't look at the data ourselves, if we don't start to see, we're going to lose market share because some of these other appliance makers will, and they're going to start making new products to both work with your stuff and become more responsive.
It's startling when you look at 3 different brands of coffeer. And they use the same amount of toner. They have the same number of pages per minute. All those variables can be within plus or minus 1 or 2%, and yet one of them uses twice as much energy as the other when it's sitting there, and you never knew that. And now I can tell you which one you're going to buy when you make a purchasing decision.
Exactly.
And if the company with the inefficient device doesn't get it together, they're going to get left behind.
They're going to get to bring us sort of full circle. They're going to be like these companies we talked about, these big companies that ignored the disruption in their market space, and as a result become obsolete themselves. So everybody should be keeping a close eye on you guys, because it sounds like you're going to, but for also too, I think it's going to add teeth for some of these, compelling public policy goals, because you hear, well, we need to be more efficient. Then the question, but the public is how? How? And now you're providing the how, and a disruptive innovation may provide the how, especially since now you're tearing down the walls, the silos, and the occlusion of outside areas, which I think leads to this secular, same problem, same space, same result type of thing.
Drive information down to a more granular, fine-grained level, and give people access to that information. And we've seen that over and over again in the internet revolution.
So Glenn, do you see that the disruption innovation is something that could be a driver for Hawaii's economy, not beyond what OceanIt is doing? Perhaps as this idea is embraced, as people see these products being used both in the public realm and the private realm, that this will grow?
I really believe that. I grew up in Hawaii, and I was actually away for about 25 years and then came back. One of the reasons I came back was because of the environment in OceanIt, but then more importantly, to answer your question, it's the environment in the state. We're off the beaten path, but it allows us to consider possibilities for solutions, for technologies that wouldn't normally occur. I was in Northern California. wouldn't occur to someone in Silicon Valley or someone in Washington, D.C. So I think there are a lot of advantages. And another point about Hawaii is we're in a unique situation. We're isolated.
Yes.
So we don't really have redundancies
Yes.
in terms of services, in terms of supplies, and it allows us to think a bit differently.
As well for our economy, because we don't have the traditional strategic raw minerals, but innovation, ideas is something that can be exported, and
ideas don't weigh much.
They don't exactly. It's either, they don't have to pay $10 for shipping for ideas, but what they do, I think we are, and I share your thoughts. We are kind of the idea or innovation state, as I like to say, because we are in the middle Pacific, because we have to be more sustainable and resilient given our isolation. And because we have to make a better mousetrap constantly, and with companies like OceanIt and IBiS here in Hawaii, you're doing that. And so yes, it's important to be recognized so that there's support from government and the private sector is there, because the innovation economy could be the key to these issues of reversing the brain drain and how do you build a sustainable economy beyond military and tourism. But what's great, what's interesting, I dropped my microphone. It's one of these.
Exciting.
It's so exciting, so innovation that I dropped it. Well, one of the most exciting things here is I go ahead and adjust this technical thing here. There we go. 1 second. I'm sorry. Well, anyway, I'll just hold it like this since we're still taking our next break. To go back to one of the exciting things about the innovation economy is that it can bolster our traditional economic pillars.
Absolutely, and I spent the previous 6 years until I joined IBiS investing in technology companies here with Koloala Ventures, really with that idea. How do we create a sustainable technology economy in Hawaii, and what are we good at? And I think what we've seen is, one of the big areas is the clean technology revolution, renewables, which we're smack dab in the middle of. The Office of Naval Research and Hawaii's Energy Accelerator are super well funded, really focused on helping that transition. We're the green lab of the Pacific. And what we find is that even large multinational corporations use Hawaii to that effect. So you'll see 7-Eleven Hawaii's, 60, 70 stores. They've got 52,000 stores worldwide. They're looking at energy efficiency, and they test things out in Hawaii, and then they can apply it elsewhere. And you see that over and over again. Hawaii is a great place to perfect technologies, scale them up, get that customer feedback, find that traction, find that customer push and pull, and then take it elsewhere. So I think Hawaii has an opportunity in clean tech, in, as you say, ideas, innovation, medical research, medical devices. We've got the opportunity to really be a center of excellence.
Yes, and you see it in the aerospace initiatives as well. We talked about Elon Musk earlier. He's active out here in Hawaii through our aerospace program, using us as a green lab. And also you create this innovation visitor economy where groups of people, and especially now through diverse stakeholders, are coming to Hawaii to exchange ideas, to see it in action. They're coming here to see OceanIt, to see IBiS in action, and then take it back to their area or country to apply it to their industries and such. So we're actually creating a multiple level of economic and societal impact through this crazy thing that we call the disruptive innovations phase. And well, it's been one of the things I guess I always act at the end as we face our future is, where do you see in 5 years we get together, we have this conversation again, where do you think, through the innovation economy, where do you think the next big things are going to be coming from? I mean, do you see that more of a convergence of these different areas? Do you see that perhaps that there is going to be a continual re-evolution of the products that you've originally designed?
I think I'd like to answer a little broadly. I think one of the things we'll see in the next 5 years is first look at the last 5 years. We've seen a lot of increases in the access of information, the ability to manipulate information. Now on the next 5 years, I think we're going to see a little bit on the flip side of the reaction of society is, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that being awash in this information? That's one thing. And the second thing, this is a little more specific, is I think we're actually going to see development of what I'll call human augmentation. The augmentation of people's abilities, mentally, physically, through either the access to information or technology for the aging population as well as other parts of society. I really think yes.
I would tackle that a little bit. I think the big revolution that we're starting to see is in healthcare and in disease
Yeah.
and in medical research. They're bringing, what we're seeing now is bringing the Moore's Law, bringing the power of technology to medical research. And 3 years ago, to do an assay on a cancer drug was $10 million a pop, and it took 6 weeks. And today you can do the same test for $200,000, and it takes an hour. I mean, we're driving medical research like never before. And I think we'll see, part of that is the augmentation, but we're going to see, curing diseases, making ourselves live longer, being healthier. We're finally starting to understand that we're giant walking around bags of bacteria. We're finally starting to understand the biome, the flora and fauna that live inside of you and on top of you. We have no idea. And now you can go out and do your DNA testing. You can test the stuff that lives on you and in you, and understand how that interacts with food. We know next to nothing about nutrition, really. And I think that's the next 5-10 years we're going to see just massive changes there.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for coming on and joining us today. This has been exciting stuff to talk about, disruptive innovation, and clearly from what we've seen today, this is a potential for us in Hawaii and all over the world to have better products, better lives, and create a better economy and address issues that have quite frankly eluded our grasp for so many years. So look forward to talking more about this. Really great stuff, and of course excited to have you back in the future with even more devices and toys and sockets. And so once again, this is Facing Our Future, your host Angus McKelvey. Join us next week for another exciting discussion as we peel back the future to look at trends and innovations that can help better define the possibilities we have here in Hawaii. Aloha.